Hey y'all, I kind of said the last video I did yesterday was going to be the last one I did from location at the Hunter Burton Memorial Open, which I spent a lot of time at this weekend. Let me get these headphones off. And that was my intention, but I decided, I'm kind of still here at the end of the night after kind of taking care of the event and everything else, doing my part that I had to do. And I kind of wanted to recap how we did everything because this being the first major Magic event, major card event, or gaming event in general, in a lot of ways, since the start of the pandemic, I know has eyes on it. And people said, like, how were we able to do this? What kept it safe? And kind of what was the outcome of everything? How did people feel? I want to go over all these things and kind of give some context to everything because it is new and it's different and it's weird. And, you may be thinking about eventually going to a Woods of the Coast event next year, or later this year going to a Flesh and Blood tournament or whatever, and kind of have an idea of what you're in for. So let's get into it and let's talk about things from the top, and we'll talk about the event itself. Where do we start? Let's say start with registration, right? Because normally this is an event over the course of the weekend. We'd see something like 2,000 plus players, based on the 2019 numbers that we built up to. And I say we, this is really a larger event, mostly being put together by Aaron Giddings, who's the director of operations, and Joe Klopchik, who's kind of the head of logistics for the event. They handle most of the stuff. I mostly just help promote it. I'm with them doing commentary or whatever and kind of helping with the presentation side of things. But, at registration, it was decided several months ago that we would open registration and cap it. And the original number, I believe we capped at like 400. And then it was just as things started to look better with the pandemic, it was decided we'd open up more slots. And as things continued to look better, then we'd open up more slots. So that way we weren't really promising too many seats if things went badly. And sadly, as we've seen over the last 60-ish days, things kind of took a turn for the worse as far as COVID goes. And we weren't going to add any more seats. So what they did instead is, as people canceled, just don't add any of those seats back and just let it work its way down based on who decides not to travel or whatever. And we ended up with just over 500 people. And that actually was fine. That worked out okay. The room never felt crowded. There were still enough people for side events and stuff, and everything went off very well. So in that regard, I think monitoring the attendance was a very big deal. The other thing was, how do we set up the room? You wanted there to be hand sanitizer stations everywhere. You wanted there to be enough room for people to walk through without being on top of each other. Players at least still had plenty of elbow room. You just wanted to keep it as spaced as we reasonably could and still run the event and still give people plenty of places they could still get away, right? If they needed space or wanted to take their mask off and go outside. And that's another thing we need to talk about is the mask situation. Literally, everybody had a mask. It was non-negotiable. You knew it when you signed up. Every person came in with one. If you didn't have one, we gave you one. Anybody who didn't have their mask on properly, we had people walking around checking and had security. So if somebody had gotten out of line, you would have just been asked to leave. Fortunately, that didn't come up at all. Everybody was willing to comply. And I really didn't see it affecting anyone at all throughout the weekend, especially since we had plenty of spaces outdoors where if you wanted to go and take a smoke break, we did have a designated eating area. And that was the one place you could have your mask off. So if you got something from the concessions or you were just grabbing a drink or whatever, you could go to that spot and it was safe. I believe we also had a couple of VIP spaces that were a little private as well, and that helped out. But between that, the hand sanitizer stations, even for commentary, and we know the staff was all vaccinated and taken care of. So for commentary, we didn't wear masks when it was just us and the production team there. But anytime we brought in I guess we'll just say a participant who we're doing like a winner's interview with or whatever, then we all did mask up while we did the interview until the person left, and then we went back to no mask. So we did as well as we could to still put on a very nice presentation, but at the same time, keep everybody's health within the scope of concern. If it was somebody that wasn't particularly part of a smaller group, then we always masked up. If we walked around in the facility, if we even went to just go into the room to go ask the judges something or whatever else, put the mask on at all times. And that worked out very well for everybody. As for our concessions, there was nothing that was just open air. Everything that was there was covered the entire time if it didn't have a wrapper. We did a VIP and staff lunch, whereas normally we would have a buffet. We weren't able to do that, obviously, under current conditions. So we ended up having the hotel staff had it set up where basically they had a menu for lunch, and they would just bring you the items, and that worked out very well for us. The staff was on point, so credit to the Hearst Conference Center and Hotel there with the Hilton Garden Inn. Both facilities really stepped up. Everything we needed, everything we asked, they were on top of it. Everything was wiped down, constantly cleaning stuff up, making sure trash was emptied, taking care of everybody during lunch with the conditions. It was fantastic. And we were one of the first big events they've had, since all this started as well. So for some of them, it was a practice run for some ideas as well. So that was actually really cool. So we got to do that. And that was pretty interesting, getting to work with people going through different issues on their side as well. One of the things I don't think people know is the hotel staff even mentioned that they weren't working with all the regular people. Hotels are moving employees between hotels right now to make sure they have enough people on staff for various things. And the other good thing that was cool was apparently the participants for the event were all very, very nice, enough to where we had staff members saying from the hotel saying they would like to work the event next year because our patrons were really nice. So thank you to all the players who participated for being considerate under the conditions. And the event itself, this is kind of like one of those things where it was neat to talk to the people and just see how people felt. There was a sense of, I was concerned for me personally that this would be more of a feeling of defiance of people saying, well, I'm going to go play my games and I'm going to go be part of this regardless of what's going on. And fortunately, that wasn't the case. A lot of people just felt relief to be able to be around people, to be able to just kind of socialize with their friends. Several people said this was the first time they'd been around any significant amount of people in any level of closeness outside of the grocery store or something. That came up several times. So that was actually kind of interesting to hear from a lot of people, but it makes a lot of sense. I was a lot in the same way. I make content generally every day from my little home office studio, whatever you want to call it, and outside of a handful of friends that are vaccinated and also work from home and are largely isolated, I haven't really seen anybody. I think I did that one video with the professor back in October last year. And even when we did that, I went and got COVID tested, quarantined for 10 days, literally drove to meet him. We did a day and a half of filming and I drove right back home, so it's been tough. It's been tough. So it was definitely a bit of a learning experience, and the players were all very cool. Everybody was totally understanding. We didn't hardly have to reprimand anybody about mask etiquette. So for that, I want to say thank you to everybody, because it could have been a much more problematic situation than it was, and everybody really treated it so nicely. It was really good to see. We also had several players that still drove from out of town. It's one of the things we really kind of have been proud of over the last couple of years, is that we've gone and done an event so well that we have people that would literally fly across the country. And here we had a few more as well. We had people that came from Arizona, from the state of Washington, from Oklahoma, so people did come still from all over, even though it wasn't a very highly attended event. So, if you're an organizer and the event's appealing, people will still show up. Now, some of that is built up history, right? We've done this was our 7th year for the event. So there's people kind of understand what it is. There's the mission behind it. We were raising money to prevent suicide and, create more awareness around it. So that was a big deal, and some people like supporting that. So I don't know if that would hold up, as far as out of state, out of area attendance for other games or other events. I don't really know, but that's just a data point there I want to put out there for people. So, the events, we ended up we still had enough people, like I said, to do side events, which was great. So our main event was a 10K, our side event was a 5K. We also had some smaller legacy and vintage events with some cash prizes. We had a chaos draft, some commander stuff was being played. So just a whole lot of things. And everything, credit to Joe Klopchik and Hibbs. David Hibbs also very good. They really ran a pretty tight ship. The judges had people getting up and down. All the judge staff on the floor were getting results in quickly. So everything went very well. We can't complain about that at all. We had so many good resources at our disposal to make this happen, and really, it's with the help of so many sponsors. They helped pony up the cash for the tournaments, gave us products and stuff we'd give away in the silent auctions. So all that was great. This was also the first time we got to see a lot of Modern being played with cards that came out in the last 18 months, right? We've had Commander Legends, we've had Modern Horizons, all these other sets, even some good reprint stuff with Times Per Hour Remastered, right? So it was the first time we got to see a lot of the stuff in action, and that was very cool. Tons of stuff from Modern Horizons 2. Not a surprise, we thought that was going to be the case. We did kind of, in some ways, get to shape the metagame going forward for a little bit. So that's an interesting thing to be part of, a little bit different, We did have two, if you can believe it, two Cascade Rhinos decks in the finals. So I don't know what that means for the state of Modern going forward. It's just something interesting. I will say, when we cut to day 2, we had 67 players, and I believe the count was 19 different deck types among those 67 players. So that's very good. The most popular deck by a long shot was the Hammer Time deck. I believe of the 67 on day 2, there were 8 or 9, and that was the highest represented deck. So the format was pretty diverse. The games some were very fast, some were very slow. It just kind of depended. The quick games were mostly because somebody hit a certain situation that created a blowout or usually stifled somebody's resources, and that was the biggest change in the games. So, still kind of the same old Modern. It was just cool to see all these new cards. The only downside is there were a lot of free spells, and I think those were kind of the talk of the tournament. They really dominated a lot of stuff, and if they weren't main deck, they were in the sideboard of a whole lot of decks. So I don't know how I feel about that, but like Wizards, cut back on the free spells. That's going to be kind of how you ruin some formats. Let's not do that. How did I personally feel about this event? I'm still on the fence. It's the first time like I said, that I've been around people. The first event, I hadn't even been to my local F&Ms yet, and those just started back up. So this was a little bit of a tough one for me. I kept out of the main crowds as much as I could. If I had to pass through, obviously I had to pass through. If I was watching something, I tried to make sure, I was spaced decently from people. I wasn't right on top of somebody, even taking pictures for coverage. So, I did what I could to kind of distance myself. I did somewhere during the weekend have a little bit of a sniffle that I was fighting. So you probably saw that on coverage because, when I'm trying to talk and not sniffle or sneeze, a little bit of a pain. Not COVID, so we're good. But still, just a thing. But I didn't want it, even just being, who knew at the time, it could have been just a common cold thing. I definitely didn't want to pass that to somebody either. But yeah, I feel pretty good about it though. I feel that if people, and admittedly, a lot of this that you can and can't do to protect yourself in your events is going to have to do with local jurisdictions, how people feel about masks or whatever in your area. But even in this being in Texas, where there's a lot of people who don't want to wear masks, just putting the mask mandate up front at registration meant, you weren't going to have a situation with people without masks. And we had plenty on hand. And we had a couple people who did show up and said, oh man, I forgot mine. What do I do? Can I get one from somebody? And we quickly turned around, grabbed one, they popped them on, no issue. So that made me feel pretty good. At the end of the day, I feel like we did take a lot of steps to at least make the event as safe as possible for the people that showed up. Would I say that everybody should be back to running large events? Absolutely not. Mostly because I know that the average person, and honestly, a lot of the organizers or whoever, aren't going to be as diligent. To the point that you're going to have security to escort people out if they're not wearing masks or whatever. And I think the only way you can do events right now, and I know, and here's the thing. I want to say, if you don't believe in COVID, if you don't believe in masks, I don't know, that's a you thing. People do what they're going to do. But if you're participating in an event and somebody says, hey, this is the rule, we're going to have masks whether you like it or not, this is a thing, then, you either show up to the event or you don't. You show up, you play by their rules. If you don't, you don't. That it's just that simple. I'm not going to say people. I mean, I would prefer you wear a mask. I think, it shows that masks work and the vaccines work. But if that's not for you, then, you kind of just got to stay out of these events until things change. I'm not sure what else to tell you. And I think if you are willing to hold to those rules strictly, I think you can hold a safe event. And I would probably go to a few more, but I think there's still a limit even for me. If this had been the normal like 2,000 people, somewhere in, and that's just like people playing in events. We probably all told probably had 2,500 to 3,000 people come through on the weekend. I don't think I'd feel as good about it. I think there's just too many people in a tight space, even with masks or whatever. I probably wouldn't feel great. With there just being, like I said, 500-ish for the main event, and less than that obviously for the side events. Like, yeah, I was okay with it. And because of what I was doing, my job here was specifically to be in a whole secluded area for the bulk of the time doing commentary or helping with the presentation. And that really affects things as well. So yeah, I guess to wrap all this on a nice bow, the event went well. We had a large number of people from all over the country that came and played, had a lot of cool decks, saw a lot of new cards get utilized. We kind of helped set the metagame for Modern for a little bit. We kind of set the stage for how to handle events. That was another thing. And overall, players left happy. People were thankful for how we handled things. People said this is about as safe as they thought they could feel being in a major event. So that was good. Some people that even said specifically they were expecting to be anxious and whatever, and they really weren't. So yeah, credit to all that. Also, if you want to see the deck lists, they are still up at mtgel.com. You can just click on the Hunter Burton Memorial Open event, and you can check the deck list there. You can see the standings and everything. They all are publicly accessible, which is awesome. You can also go to the Hunter Burton Memorial Open.com website. That is the home site for the charity organization. And you can get, we have some of these Hunter Burton Memorial t-shirts you can buy, I believe, starting Wednesday. Those will be up. You can also just make a donation to the charity if you like. We also announced that there will be a new program starting next year that we're going to be rolling out to individual stores and groups. So you can run your own small tournaments to support the Hunter Burton Memorial Open. And the kits will come with information about suicide, resources, signs to look for, things like that, to kind of increase the education around this cause as well. So a lot of good things are still going to come out of this despite COVID being what it was. But it was definitely a bit of an experience. A lot of learning I think everybody has to take away. And I think if you follow my streams or whatever, or you're in my Discord, feel free to come by, ask questions, because I'm sure as I process this over the next 24, 48 hours, when I have a little more time, I'll probably have even more to say about it. But I at least wanted to put this out here now while it's fresh on my mind. And, just say thank you to everybody who came and participated. If you want to see the events and the coverage, you can go to twitch.tv/Hunter Burton Memorial Open. Those are still, the VODs are already up and live and loaded, so you can check all that out. Lots of pictures are included in those streams as well, so you can kind of get a look of everything going on if you're curious. I just hope this is at least some reasonable building block, because I don't think we're necessarily ready to get right back to large events. I'm not sure I'll be going to any large football games or anything, but I think it's at least a stepping stone for us that if you do feel the need to run events or whatever, please be safe as you can about it. Take precautions, make sure your staff is vaccinated, protected, and, just be safe out there, y'all. I mean, I know we don't all think the same way, we don't all believe the same way. I just hope whatever you're doing, you are as safe as possible, and take your neighbors into consideration, your fellow players into consideration, because we're still not out of this yet, and we see some signs that a few areas are even getting worse before they're getting better. So please, please, please be careful out there, so everybody stays safe, so once this all blows over, we still have everybody here to game with. As always, I hope you really follow the rest of my content. Please remember to like, subscribe, all that good stuff. And I'm going to get some rest because I got to go get on a plane tomorrow and make more content for y'all for the rest of the week.